Is Supawood too expensive? We hear this question a lot, and it's no secret that most of our quotes have a higher dollar value on them than most of our competitors. Sometimes much higher, but are we more expensive? Now obviously that's going to depend on what we're comparing to, so let's investigate in more depth. A typical Supawood package includes all of the following: the panel, factory pre-finishing, matching edges, acoustic perforations, cutting to size and shapes, including the customized perforations to suit those shapes, as well as surface cutouts with modifications to the perforation to suit them, an acoustic backing, a fixing system, joint systems, for example backing strips, returns where they're needed, and of course the friendly and support and advice to help recommend the very best ways to select and utilize these options for your project specific requirements, as well as acoustic advice and acoustic performance data based on extensive testing to Australian standards that you can have complete confidence in, and fire compliance based on over $200,000 worth of testing to ensure products meet the requirements of the BCA's very latest AS 5637 requirements. So let's compare a Supawood quote with the above to a hypothetical alternative which is less than half the price. So for the purpose of this exercise, we'll take the case where the alternative supplier has an apparently identical material, acoustic pattern, acoustic backing and edging, but it's quoted on standard size panels only with no fixing system or backing strips. So we see a little table here. You'll notice that for the purpose of the exercise we've worked on at $200 a square meter for the Supawood and less than half of that for the alternative. But as you can see, because there's less support and more labour required, the alternative will cost a little more to frame and install, which will take longer, so therefore there's more access equipment hire required. The same amount of framing materials needed, but there's extra on-site costs for labour to cut the panels to size. There's the cost of the material that it needs to be paid for, but it will actually be thrown away because they're being supplied as full-size panels, as well as the labour to cut the edges and the labour to create concealed fixings. So let's assume that the alternative supplier is a good and thorough company and their material, machining and coating are all down to the same quality as Supawood. Assuming that, and that's a big if, there are still significant quality differences between the above options. For example, Supawood cut-to-size panels will have perforations and slots and borders to those perforations to match their size. The alternative will either have cut-through perforations or large solid zones to the perimeters. Supawood shaped panels have perforations and slots adjusted to follow their shape, while the alternative will be either cut through the perforations or solid zones to the perimeter, which will not match the shape. Supawood surface cutouts will have non-slotted zones to suit, the alternative will have surfaces cut through the slots. Now, when Supawood first started 20 years ago, all of the above were industry standard practice and expected, but with increasing popularity of acoustic panels during the last 2 decades, client expectations have risen, and these practices are now regarded as corner cutting. What would it cost if any of these factors caused the architect, client or builder to defect the panels? Now replacement panels and the labour to remove and replace, and was that on-site made fixing system even removable, plus extra access hire and rework from services, for example electricians, and risk of liquidated damages? But perhaps you can persuade or force them to accept it, but they quietly decide that next time they'll use another contractor. What is the cost of the future lost work? We cannot calculate the likelihood or cost of these possibilities, but do know that if they do happen, they will cost more than the differences between the suppliers and between the prices and the comparison. But there are other bigger risks, much bigger than those mentioned so far, that we've seen happen many times over the years. For example, the alternative is a different finish to what the architect intended, and no one realised until it was too late and the entire area needed to be replaced. Or perhaps the alternative was found to be non-compliant with the BCA clause C110, and the entire area must be replaced. Or it wasn't compliant and they had to use special coatings and a project-specific custom engineering solution. Or perhaps it varies from a way that impacts the acoustic performance and the entire area must be replaced. Or the on-site created fixing system fails, and that could be disastrous. So all of these things have happened more than once over the years, and while the probability of them happening on your particular project isn't very high, it's not something you want to take a chance on. Nothing is more expensive than an alternative that's rejected. Now there are other reasons why our prices may seem higher. Firstly, in budget pricing, early in the process, when details of what is or may not be required is sparse, many suppliers will submit pricing based on the cheapest possible options. For example, standard size panels only, and fire group 3 with no concealed fixing system. What this means is as the design progresses, or even after the order is placed and details are fleshed out, the price will rise, leaving projects over budget or contractors out of pocket. For this reason, at Supawood, our practice when providing early stage budget pricing is to factor in a common set of assumptions, rules of thumb, in terms of cut to size panels, joint details, fixing systems, edging, etc., where these aren't yet known. These assumptions are designed to be conservative and allow for potential inflation between the budget stage and construction, which can be up to 24 months. So when precise information is known, the price is much more likely to be roused downwards than upwards. Now some projects, especially large ones with big areas of mostly full-size panels, will have significantly lower wastages in these assumptions. Perhaps there's a genuine mistake or misunderstanding. As mentioned above, we may have allowed for inclusions or wastage that you do not need or want. So it's important to work through your proposal with our team in detail to ensure we're allowed for precisely what you need and want, and nothing that you don't need. And since every project is quoted on its own unique parameters, it has happened more than once we've made an error in calculation that's increased the quoted price significantly. So if you've looked into all the above points and we're still inexplicably higher than you think we should be, contact us. We're human and may have made an error in calculation.